So I'll move to the final segment, which is the personal side. And there's a couple of very interesting questions and final thoughts. So you Bjorn, you made the switch. You were in shipping, then you made it to the 3PL side, and then 13 years ago, obviously with Electrolux on the shipper side. You've done what a lot of people in the 3PL and shipping lines dream of doing, right? Move to the client side. Mm. Any advice for those guys trying to do the same?
Well, I think I have. So my advice is network, and network. Right? If that's really what you want to do, then you got a network. I actually made it to the buy side or the dark side or whatever you want to call it by pure serendipity, and that's a story that I can't really tell, but it was a serendipitous moment, and you should never discount serendipity in finding your next job, right? But of course, I wouldn't have gotten on the radar screen of Electrolux if I didn't somehow pop up on somebody's
radar,
right? And if I didn't have the right skills and a bit of a personal brand, which I had and have, so spend time on building your personal brand. All right, be careful about how you build it, but be visible, and of course, working in the industry. It tends to be then when people switch over from shipping lines or 3PLs to the buy side, it tends to be because they've worked with specific clients, and those clients have liked what they see. So if you're lucky enough to work with a big MNC and you want to switch, make sure that A, that you make that known, and B, that you do work for them that brings you onto their radar.
Yeah.
Right? I'll also say, it is absolutely not the first time that I've been asked this question. In fact, it may be the 600th time.
I can imagine it.
You usually get asked the question by people who want to make that switch. Right? Sometimes also be careful what you wish for, because you may get it. Right? I know people who've made the switch who ultimately moved back after a year into the 3PL side. I can think of 2 or 3 people right off the top of my head. And that has a lot to do with, when we talked about very early in this podcast, what a humbling experience it was for me to move over on the other side, right? You need to accept, if you move over on the other side, that it's not just about being given a bully pulpit with which to now hammer the 3PLs and do to them what they did to you and all that sort of stuff. That tends to be what's on people's minds, right? You have to make the effort to learn, really learn. Very often you have to make the effort to almost totally re-educate yourself, right? And accept that you're not at the top of the food chain for a while, over on the other side, right? So look inward very closely before you decide to make the switch. Say, am I willing to do that? Or is that just not something that I can do at this stage, right? Mm. The grass is not greener over on this side. It's just a different type of grass, right? And you better be prepared for change in diet, as it were, right?
Great. That's a great analogy.
When you move over, right?
Yeah.
So the advice, is no different from any other job advice. Make sure you do a good job. Make sure you're visible. Make sure you take care of your network, but also be prepared to accept the change that will come if one day you're the dog that actually catches that car.
Yeah.
Right? You're like, okay, now what?
and it's a great point that, people actually, I think sometimes people just have these knee-jerk reactions, and it's not just about this particular 3PLs to shippers, but in general, right? Always we think the grass is greener on the other side. We don't do enough background check. We don't understand actually even what is it. You just see the shiny part. You don't see the the non-glamorous part.
Absolutely.
So great point. Better do your background check.
Really, the most people who ask this question are people who are on the sales side. For example, if you work for 3PL, you've been to a number of negotiations with people like me or other people. Of course, if it's been with me, it's been unfailingly pleasant. But when I was on the sales side, I've been to some very unpleasant ones, right? And so you can't help but sit there and dream, oh man, I want to sit on the other side of that table one day. It's got, oh man, they're going to get it, right? Or at the very least, I'm going to get out of this situation and I won't have to sell anymore. I'll have to buy. And to those people, I always say, I spent probably half my career in sales.
Yeah.
I have never done more selling in my life than in the past 13 years with Electrolux. Because that guy that you're sitting there facing as a salesman, for example, if it's me, I'm going to have to go out and sell you to the organization later on, right, as a service provider. I don't know very many people in my position who have total autonomy to just spend lavishness of other people's money, right? So you're having a meeting with me because I want to find out if you're worth me trying to sell to my organization, right? If you think you're going to get out of selling just by getting my job, you have another thing coming.
Yeah.
A lot of internal sales is also sales.
Yeah.
Right.
Great point. What's any early morning routines that you follow?
Well, I do try to shower every day.
It's like motivation, right? Better do it daily.
I'm an early bird. I don't know why, but somehow I'm programmed to sleep maximum 6 hours, and it doesn't really matter when. So I usually wake up on or before 6 a.m. And I have a morning like a lot of other people. My kids are old and don't live with me anymore. They're in boarding school, so it's that morning school routine is gone. So for me, I've always enjoyed those early morning hours when nobody calls you, hardly anybody's awake. And I am a fairly prolific user, as you know, of social media. So I start with that and a cup of coffee. Then I do my emails, and very often get to the point where most of my emails are done or taken care of, or at least categorized before I come to work.
Yeah.
And so being a morning person is a great privilege.
Productive.
I'm
the same.
I'm unfortunately not as strong on my fitness routine as I should be. That tends to be a weekend activity where I then go absolutely crazy with cycling and golf and all the rest of it. But not as much exercise during the week mornings as there should be. Yeah, I'm afraid.
Yeah. What is this is a question I like to ask a lot. What is something that you believe in that other people think it's crazy?
I think I believe in something other people, they don't think it's crazy. They would love to do it, but somehow they can't do it. I am a nearly 100% paperless. So I've actually spent a significant amount of money and a whole lot of time in climbing the learning curve over the last 4 or 5 years, both in my personal and in my business life. You come to my desk, you won't find a scrap of paper on there unless it's something that's there for my signature. And if it's there for my signature, I tell people to take it away, scan it, and email it to me so I can sign it on my iPad with my Apple Pencil. I built my whole life around apps like Evernote, Dropbox, and a few others. MindNote springs to mind that really enable you once you've jumped the hurdle.
Yeah.
To live a totally paperless existence, to the extent that paper enters my life privately in the form of utility bills or whatever. If I really can't get them by email, I immediately scan them, throw them into Evernote, and throw the paper away.
Yeah.
So people think I'm a nerd. I probably am. People think I'm crazy, but when anyone needs an important document from me and I can produce it on my iPhone, my iPad, or my computer within 30 seconds. They're not laughing anymore. It's a hard hurdle. It's a high hurdle.
Yeah.
But very rewarding, and I guess some people think that is crazy.
Yeah. I should ask you for some tips. I have way too much paper.
I've tutored an awful lot of people.
A couple of more questions very quickly. So, social media. We spoke a little bit about social media. So, tell me a little bit. How do you use it? Does it help your brand? How? Yeah.
Well, I mean, social media can help you and hurt you. It can help you very quickly. It can hurt you even faster. Right. As a brand, if we talk about Electrolux, obviously we're very keenly aware of the power of social media. We're all over it: Twitter, Facebook, Pinterest is a big one for us.
Oh yeah.
Because that's where a lot of people do their research on, when they're building a new kitchen or a new laundry room. So Pinterest is one of the most surprising ones. I don't spend a lot of time on it. Twitter, a lot of videos that we release these days on LinkedIn, on Facebook, etc. Again, the Innova acquisition was a big eye opener for us as well. They've developed the use of social media and the advertising on social media into a fine art. We use it to communicate corporate news, etc. And that's only going to get bigger and bigger. And of course, what we're keenly aware of is the power of social media to very quickly work against your brand, right? I mean, let's be honest. These days, if a customer has a washing machine that's broken down or has a bad experience, he or she will tweet it out, and within 5 minutes,
the whole world,
200,000 people will read it, and your response is absolutely everything, right? So we have a large group of people that monitor that.
Yeah, because I mean, actually, that's an opportunity. Actually, I mean, there's no problem. I mean, everybity screws it up sometimes.
Absolutely correct.
The way you respond to the screw up.
You can turn a screw up into something very valuable if you react swiftly, conclusively, and in a manner that will then cause the customer to go, wow, that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Right? But I mean, let's be honest. As people, we have an unfortunate tendency to only tell other people when we've had a negative experience, whereas the 99 customers who had an absolutely perfect onboarding experience, well, they kind of take that for granted, and that's cool. They don't tell people about it. Right?
Yeah.
So there's this great power. Personally, on social media, well, you know me, I'm a prolific user of Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter for very different purposes. Obviously, on Twitter is a lot of professional stuff. I follow a lot of influencers and news outlets that are supply chain and shipping specific, and I tweet my opinions. LinkedIn is a more professional network, of course, where I occasionally publish articles that tend to get read by quite a number of people. You have to be quite careful what you put in those articles. Facebook is where you can get political and controversial and
personal views out there.
And I am. I think it's fair to say. But we all have to have our little outlets. You just need to be very, very careful, I think, in your own use of social media that you don't mix the three.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, each channel has a purpose. Right?
Place for everything and everything in its place. Yeah. Basically, right?
Don't mix and match.
No.
Final question: If somebody just graduating the university nowadays would ask you, what are some of the principles to follow in their careers, so that one day maybe they become chief supply chain officer or global head of logistics for Electrolux, what type of advice? What would you tell them? What's the principles?
Well, there's principles, and then there's a concrete action that you can take, right? So in terms of the principles that you need to live your life by, I think Professor Martin Christopher from Cranfield, who's a very old friend of mine, and I've worked quite a lot with him. He had two wonderful phrases that I think he more or less invented, right? He said, first of all, if you want to work in logistics or supply chain, you must be comfortable with ambiguity, okay? If you can't be comfortable with not all the answers are there right now, and by the way, the situation can change in 5 minutes. If that's not the type of life or job you're comfortable with, but then don't even think about it. Okay, so to be comfortable with ambiguity and to indeed embrace ambiguity as an opportunity, right? You very quickly learn when you're in logistics and supply chain that there's never a 100% solution. And if you wait until you have a 100% solution, then the train has probably left the station. So 80% is really good enough in supply chain and logistics. You just need to make it the right 80%.
Yeah.
All right. So you have to be comfortable with there being 20% that you are not going to solve right now. Maybe you'll solve it later, but So comfort with ambiguity. The other wonderful phrase that Martin has used from time to time is the notion of the T-shaped personality. Okay, so rather than being this I-shaped person who sits fits very comfortably into a silo, right? You need to be a T-shaped personality that really understands the supply chain. And let's be clear: the supply chain is not just about container and warehouse. The supply chain starts in procurement, and planning. And it goes all the way through to your customer's customer. And so if you really want a career in supply chain that's going to take you to the top, you're going to have to make it your business to learn all of those functions. Doesn't necessarily mean you need to work in every single one of them, but you have to make an effort to reach out to people who do and understand what it is they do for a living. For a bunch of reasons. First, it will enable you to make much more informed decisions. Secondly, it will ensure that at least you don't become that silo that we're all trying to break down. Right, so that's sort of the concrete action you can take is reach out to people in different fields, different departments in the company and try and find out what they do. Can you work there? If you can work different functions, that's even better, right? Travel, read, educate yourself constantly. There's no excuse for not doing it anymore. In the days when I started in logistics, you had to go to the bookstore and hope that they had some books on it that weren't too old. These days, any iPhone will drown you in information if you go looking for it, right? So be the T-shaped personality, be comfortable with ambiguity, make an effort to reach out to different functions and learn what they do, and never stop learning.
Yeah. No, super. Excellent. Excellent pieces of advice. Bjorn, it's been a pleasure. Thanks a lot for your time. Thanks for sharing with us. Good luck, and also let's share with our listeners. Good luck in your new geography after 30 years in Asia.
I'm moving across in a couple of months. I'm moving to the US. But for those who are hoping that there might be a job opening here, I have to disappoint you. I'm literally taking my job with me, simply to a new country, and I look forward to that.
Thank you, Bjorn. Good luck, and catch you soon.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. If you liked what you heard, be sure to follow us on radopalamario.com/podcast for all the show notes, links, and extra tips covered in the interview. Make sure also to subscribe to our emailing list to get the news in the nick of time. If you're listening through a streaming platform like iTunes or Stitcher and you like what we do, please kindly review and give us 5 stars so we can keep the energy flowing and get more people to find out about our podcast. I'm most active on LinkedIn, so do feel free to follow me to stay tuned for our latest articles as well as future guests for the podcast. And if you have any suggestions or any other idea, please feel free to write to me. I respond to all. And also, please make sure not to miss our next episode, where we will be having a few other C-level and top leaders in supply chain joining us. Stay tuned.